going to go on and get started with today's lesson. Now, what we've been talking about is equation of lines. 1.4. So we started the note sheet yesterday, and we finished up with the problem about the hiker. Now, there's two ways that we can write the equation of a line. The first one is point slope, which comes in this form here. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1 is our point slope form. And we use this if we're either given 2 points or 1 point, and the slope and the point given to us is not the y-intercept. And the other version that we have is y equals mx plus b. And really, for all equations of lines, this is where we want to get to. If they ask for the equation of line, this is what we want to put our answer in this form here. And the equation for slope is m is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And the first problem that we're continuing on with is this one here. Now, we're given two prom venues charge a rental fee plus a student fee. The table shows the total cost for the different number of students at Lakeside Inn. The total cost y in dollars for X students at Sunset View or Sunview Resort is represented by this equation. So our Sunview. Well, the slope is the cost per student, and for Sunview, the cost per each student is what? Yeah, $10 per student. And the cost, or just general cost, to rent it, because we'll have a rental fee, is our y-intercept, which is $600. It's the rental fee. It's just the starting price. So just going to Sunview Resort costs us a minimum of $600 plus the total cost per student, which is $10. Questions on this so far? Now, what the problem is asking is two things. One, which venue charges less per student? And two, how many students must attend for the total cost to be the same? So those are the two things we want to figure out. Now, just from the problem itself, we knew all the information for Sunview because they gave us an equation, y equals mx plus b. Gave us all the information we need. However, Lakeside Inn did not. So first off, we need to find the slope, and then we need to get it in the correct form. So to find slope, we need 2 points. Well, they gave us multiple points. So to start this off, we need to pick a y value, or pick one of the points. So what's one of the y values we can use? $1,500. And what's its corresponding x value? So the corresponding x is 100. So if 100 students go to the Lakeside Inn for prom, it's going to cost $1,500. We need another y value. 1,800. And its corresponding x value is 125. Now at this point here, we can plug the whole thing into the calculator. We can plug this in to find slope. We don't have to do this by hand. Now if we do this by hand, 1,500 minus 1,800 will be negative 300. The denominator, the bottom of this fraction, 100 minus 125 would be negative 25. And if we divide these here, 300 divided by 25 is, now we could have plugged it in a calculator originally, 1500 minus 1800 over 100 minus 125 is 12. So the slope for Lakeside side is $12, but it's telling us that it's going to be $12 per. Yes, so we'll have another part. So we have the cost per student. Now we just need the equation of the line. And we can use point slope form for this. Our point slope form is our y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. Now the x1, y1 is just a point, xy value. And m is our slope. Well, we already found the slope. The slope is 12. So we're going to replace m with 12. Now we just need an xy value. Well, we have 5 of them. So which one do y'all want to use? The first one? Because it doesn't matter which one we use. We just have to make sure that we pick a corresponding x and y. We can't use 100 and $2,700. Those are not a corresponding pair. But before we move on and find the equations, is there any questions on this so far? Any questions on how we set up point slope form? Any questions on how we found the slope? Okay. Now the last thing we need to do is get y by itself. We need to get this back into y equals mx plus b. And the first thing we can do is multiply by 12. Well, 12 times x is 12x. We will still have our negative, and 12 times 100 is 1200. Now there's only one more step to get y by itself, because the only thing with y at the moment is our 1500. And to move it to the other side, we would and some of it's just knowing which steps to do in what order and figuring out the fastest way to do it. The last time I took, because I've not taken the whole thing in years, but I took the math recently. I think I got a 34. But again, that's doing all this. But I think the last time I took the reading, or not reading, English, it was about a 25. But looking at this here, any questions on how we got the other equation? We good with this here? Now the slope part tells us how much per student. The 300 is telling us our rental fee. So the rental fee for this is $300. Any questions on how we got this information here? Let's look at the question again. So the first part of the question is, which venue charges less per student? Which venue charges less per student? Sunview, because it charges only 10. So this here is Sunview, charges less per student. Because we can write that there, part A, Sunview charges less per student. Now the second part is how many students will it take for these two to be equal? At what point will these two be equal? Will they cost the same? So we have the one equation there. We also found that Lakeside Inn, this equation is y equals 12x plus 300. So if we want to know how many students will it take for the total cost to be the same, we're trying to get the y values to be what? Equal, because the y is our cost. The y value is our cost. So we're looking for where they are the same, where they are equal. And to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to take what they're equal to, these two parts here, and set them equal to each other, and solve for the value of x. It takes 10x plus 600 and set it equal to 12x plus 300. Any questions on what we're doing here? How we're going about finding this? What's the first thing we need to do to solve for the value of x? Besides not use a highlighter. What do we need to do? Yep. We need to get x by itself. So what do we need to do first in getting x by itself? Because I would use addition or subtraction, because we're trying to get x's on one side. 300 minus 300 is 0. Here we still have the 10x. So now we have plus 300 is equal to 12x, because our 600 minus 300 is 300. And again, the first thing we want to do in solving for x is to get x, get the variables on one side and everything else on the other with these multi-step equations. Then the next thing we'll do is we can minus the 10x. Because we do have all the numbers on one side, we just need to get the variables on the same side. So we can subtract 10x from both sides, because 10x minus 10x is 0, leaving us with just 300. 12x minus 10x is, are the variables by themselves? Yes. Now we use multiplication or division to get x by itself. And at this point we would do what? Guys, up here. We would divide both sides by so we're going to divide 300 by 2. By 2 is 150. So x is equal to. So if there's 150 students going, the cost will be the same for both. Questions on anything we did for this here? Be ready for the next one. Maple Ridge charges a rental fee plus $10 per student. The total cost is $1,900 for 140 students. Describe the number of students that must attend for the total cost at Maple Ridge to be less than the total cost at the other two venues. So we need to find out how many students need to attend for Maple Ridge to be the cheapest. And one of the nice things that we would need is the equation, because if we do have the equation, we could tell this here. Well, there's a few pieces of information they gave us. they did give us the cost per student, which is our what? It's our slope. It's the slope of the line. And they did give us a point, because they gave us the x and they gave us the y. So to find this equation, we can do y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. Because if we're given the slope and a point, we can use this here and plug our information in. Well, our slope was told to us to be $10. And the x value of our point is 140. Our y is 1900. At this point here, we do need to solve for the value of y. We need to get y by itself so we can find the starting cost, so we can see and go from there. We have the equation line. Yes. Now we distribute the 10. 10 times x would indeed be 10x. 10 times 140 is 1400. Now, the last part, guys, let's focus in here. We need to get y by itself, so we're going to add 1900 to both sides, which will tell us that y is equal to 10x plus 500. So Maple Ridge, this equation is here. One more time. So Maple Ridge's cost per student is $10 per student, but their initial cost is $500. The rental fee is $500. So out of these here, with Sunset View or Sunview, they charge the same per student, but Maple is cheaper for its rental fee. And it works out because the slopes are the same, they're both 10x, Maple Ridge will never be more expensive than Sunview because they're parallel lines. So really the only one we're looking at is seeing when is Maple Ridge going to be cheaper than Lakeside. And really to find that, or the best way to find that, is to see where their costs are the same. Because Maple Ridge starts off more expensive. Its rental fee is $500, where Lakeside's is $300. So if we can see where they're the same, we can then determine where Maple Ridge will be cheaper. And to do that, just like with the last one, we're going to set the two equations equal to each other. $10x plus 500 is equal to 12x plus 300. So we need to solve for the value of x. And the first thing we do in solving for a value is we get the x's, the variables on one side, and the numbers on the other, especially for these multi-step equations. Now looking at this one here, what is the first thing we can do? We get minus 300 from both sides. Now our 300 minus 300 is 0. On the left-hand side, we still have the 10x. Scroll down just a little bit. The next part, 500 minus 300 is going to be plus 200. Yes. The next thing we can subtract is 10x. 10x minus 10x is 0, leaving us with just 200 on the left-hand side. And 12x minus 10x is 2x. Then the last thing we need to do to get x by itself is to divide both sides by 2. 2x divided by 2 is just going to be 1x, or we can just say x. And the last thing we have to do is 200 divided by 2 is divided by 2 is? 1. Mm-hmm. Is 100. So at 100 students, Maple Ridge and Lakeside are the same. So if we have more than 100 students, Maple Ridge is cheaper. Because Maple Ridge started off at a higher initial rental fee. They meet at 100, and from there, Maple Ridge is going to be cheaper. Any questions on anything we've done so far? Now, I'm going to give you all the rest of the time to work on the assignment so that if you do have questions over this, I can answer them. Now, problems 3 through 8, you're finding the equation of a line and interpreting the slope. So you're telling us what the slope is saying, and you're finding the equation of a line in y equals mx plus b. Number 9 is kind of like what we just did or started the lesson with. You need to find which newspaper is cheaper per line and how many lines it will take for the two to be the same. And the last one, problem 11. There is an error with the work somewhere. There's a problem with how they analyzed the graph. Either the slope, some part of it, you have to identify and say what the problem is and correct it.